and you learn to cope the best you can with what you have. And then you get to a point where maybe you start creating the abandonment pattern by self-sabotaging. You give up on yourself. You make your goals impossible. You tell yourself in your head that you can't do something. You're not worth it. And you let yourself down over and over again to repeat the familiar pattern. Because there are benefits to repeating these negative patterns. I know that there's a lot of people out there that would be like, what? No, I wouldn't do that on purpose. Gross. But we do. And it's time to start addressing them. It's time to start looking at the dirty, ugly truths in our lives and sifting through them. Why not now? There's nothing else to do. Number 5, start removing the toxic people from your life. And this is kind of the result of number 4. As you start working with your self-abandonment, you're going to start figuring out that you've accidentally inserted some toxic people in your life. And this is not sexy. It's not easy, and it's really painful. But when you start to see the red flags and you start to question this other person's intention, it's time. And at first, it's not going to be crystal clear. Maybe it's hidden a little, or you don't quite see it because you really care for this person. And if you're having a hard time figuring it out, just take space from another person that you think might be toxic and see how they react. They'll tell you everything they need to know. This is not a pedicure, but this act of removing these toxic people from your life, even if they're family, is such a radical act of self-care. And yes, you might miss that person. You're going to miss that person. And you're going to miss the fun of their chaos. And it's going to hurt. But the time that you get back, the freedom in your thoughts, all of that is going to be so much better for you in the long run. So it's not the sexiest self-care idea on the planet, but removing toxic people from your life by literally taking your attention away from them, blocking them, breaking up with them, moving out of that situation, doing whatever you need to do to get away from a toxic person that is bringing you down. And how you spot a toxic person, if you're not good at spotting it, just start checking in with your energy after you're hanging out with people. And I know there's not a lot of hanging out happening right now, but in your relationships that you're continuing through COVID, start to see who is really hindering my growth, holding me back, making me feel bad about myself, manipulating or using me. These are all traits you can see a toxic person doing. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So it's time to buck up, Buttercup, and get those people out of your life. You deserve better. Number 6, doing what's right for you. And I want to give you permission right now. I want to give birth to your inner bitch. And I really want you to start standing up for yourself in an assertive manner. And then doing what's right for you, no matter what kind of backlash you might get. And just because there's not yelling and screaming involved doesn't mean that there's not backlash. When you start choosing to do what's right for you, if that conflicts with what others expect of you, you're going to experience resistance, right? Because your family, the people around you, they have learned how to treat you based on your past behavior. And as you start doing some of this more ugly self-care work, you're going to start changing that behavior. And then resistance is going to come up. But I want to give you permission right now, and I want you to practice this self-care act this weekend. I want you to do what's right for you. And if that means taking a nap in the middle of the day, even if there's a bunch of responsibilities to do, I want you to do that. If it means turning off the TV and walking away from a movie, even if your whole family is like engaged in it, because you've got to get out of the house, get some fresh air, whatever, I want you to do it. Even if there's hemming and hawing and where are you going? What's going on? I need you to start choosing what's best for you, no matter what the consequences are. It's time to really advocate for yourself and stop thinking about others and their judgments of you. Because honestly, if someone's giving you flack for a decision that you make that's for your betterment and for your good, that's how you start to notice they're a toxic person. And that's how you start identifying who's really there to support you. Because the people that love you, the people that care about you, when you make a difficult decision for yourself, even if it doesn't align with what you were previously saying or the behaviors you were previously going on, the people that love you and care about you are going to support you no matter what. So, for example, if you're in a relationship that you have been touting to everyone you know as the best thing that's ever happened to you, but behind closed doors, it's really toxic and you're dying inside, and you need to excuse yourself from that situation and remove that toxic person from your life, you need to muster up the confidence to say, I'm doing what's best for me. I don't care what other people think. And it's not always the sexiest act of self-care, but it is going to help you get to that place where you have that inner knowing, that inner confidence. And that's going to make you ultimately, authentically sexy and attractive to the right kind of person who's going to work with you and build you up instead of bring you down and make you feel bad about your choices and what you are doing. Number 7, another idea that's some self-care that's not so sexy is learning to identify your emotions. Gaining an emotional intelligence or an emotional literacy. You've got to learn to identify what you're feeling in order to supply yourself with what you need. And again, self-care is ultimately the intentional act of managing yourself. And a big part of lovingly managing yourself is getting to know your own emotions. Okay, this is not as fun as getting a massage or buying yourself a new bra, but this not so sexy act of self-care is going to propel you so fast into your highest self that it's going to shave years off of other efforts. So get into this weekend. Get smart, draw a chart of all the emotions. Make a list of every emotion that you can think of that you might go through in a day. And in one column, write down the emotion. And then in the second column, write down how you know you're having that emotion. And in the third column, write down an act of self-care to help you through that emotion. And that chart can help you all throughout your life. You can add to it, you can do a spreadsheet, you can make it pretty and colorful, you can have it as a note on your phone, but get good at personalizing this practice of identifying your own emotions. And what you're gonna find out is that we only have a handful of emotions that we can identify. And as you start getting better at it, you're going to start learning the difference of the nuances between sad and depressed, the nuances between angry and frustrated. And if you're really looking for a great resource, I want you to check out lindsaybrahman.com. She's got an emotional sensation wheel on her website, and that's lindsaybrahman.com. Check her out. And she's got this wheel that's called the Emotional Sensation Feeling Wheel. It's got the main emotions at the center, and then as you go further out into the circle, it talks about different emotions and gets into the nuance of them. And so it's really important to me that you make this a priority and that you learn about this so that if you're sad, you know to turn on your good music and get some good music going. If you're anxious, you'll know to go outside. You'll know how to identify it. And if you're feeling irritated and frustrated or really bad about yourself, you'll turn off social media, knowing that that is a main source for mental health issues in our country. So anyway, check her out. You can print that out, put it on the wall, keep it in your notebook, journal about it. Look at it when you're not sure what you're feeling to try and figure out the main feeling you're having, and then work your way through the nuances of these different emotions. It's a huge helpful resource. And I'm so glad my therapist told me about it, because identifying your emotions, while not a very not a very sexy act, is very much a part of self-care. It is not a sexy quality when someone needs constant reassurance. You're at the whim of other people when you really need assurance all the time. And it's literally destroying you from the inside. And getting yourself to the place that you really don't care what other people think, and you don't need a million likes on Facebook to feel good about yourself, is a place of power and confidence and freedom. And the easiest way to let go of that need for outside validation is to start by giving it to yourself. And this is key, my friends. And if you're really struggling on this, I have a podcast on self-validation. You can search the archives, search through the iTunes feed. I think I can't remember off the top of my head, it's somewhere in the 100s, is an episode about how to give yourself validation. But it's extremely important that you let go of needing reassurance and let go of needing other people's attaboys to feel good and feel esteemable about what you're doing. It's time that your opinion matters most, and that you give yourself those likes, those thumbs up, that validation, that feeling of you're doing a good job. And again, if you're not sure on how to do that, there's a whole show on that. But it's time that you do this act of self-care. Even though it's not sexy, it's not fun, it's work. This is the work show. All right? Number 9, we're talking about addressing your problematic thinking. And again, this is a not so sexy act of self-care. You're going to start identifying the thoughts that get you to these negative emotions that you're having. So when you start working with that Lindsey Brahman wheel of emotions, you're going to have to start then addressing the thoughts that get you to those emotions. And I am here to tell you, as a person who is working on their own thought work, this is actually a lot of fun. I know it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like a big, heavy therapist homework assignment, but it's actually a lot of fun. When you start catching yourself having those thoughts and you start realizing like, hey, this is a thought and I can choose to jump on that train or not, and then just let it pass on by. But when you start identifying the original thoughts that get you down that negative, dark, self-depressive hole, then you can identify them and go, do I really want to be thinking that? And it literally is the choice you make. Do you want to think these thoughts? And when you're thinking the thoughts, the second you realize, oh, I'm having these really negative thoughts about myself right now, you can then step back and say, do I want to be thinking that? And 99% of the time, the answer is no. You don't want to be thinking negatively about you or your self-worth. So then you get to start identifying and changing what's a better thought. What's the next best thought I can have? So instead of the thought of I'm being left out because I'm unworthy, maybe the next best thought you could have is I'm not being left out. And you could really think about all the times you've been invited to things, all the times you've created the fun. And that's an example of addressing your problematic thinking. Now, we could have a whole podcast on this, and maybe I'll do that soon. I'll devise a plan and some tricks on how you can nip these negative thoughts in the bud, because that's so important to do. Last but not least, on my 10 not so sexy self-care ideas this week, number 10 is the art of detaching. So the art of detaching is looking at an outcome and a goal or something that you want to have happen and looking at it objectively as something that you are separate from. So I think a lot of times what happens is we romanticize in our minds about an outcome, and we make it this big thing, and then it equals an emotional connection, and it equals an experience in our minds. And the practice of detachment is to objectively observe. So you just start taking the position of observing what's happening around you instead of,